Hello again. So soon I return. Um, I've got to say, the downward pull on my feelings and emotions uh, that I recorded in last night's journal isn't really here with me now. I feel better. It's not that I'm yippity skippity, and shining real bright, but I don't know, maybe deep on the inside, I'm doing that. I don't know. This is the other journal that I mentioned. It's from 12/8, and that day was to Crocodile, to cast off limitation, transcend mind. Looks like there's a bit of a theme going on here with this getting away from mind. It's changed a lot though, folks. If you go back into the earlier videos, you'll see the transition. It looks like I'm doing my path or whatever it is, in front of everybody who's wanting to watch. And so it can be seen where there's development and where there's change. Um, the change is only in the outer, who and what we are. It really pays to hold the belief, to really know you're perfect. This 3D thing we're doing here, this is not the fullness of you, of me, of any of us. And so we have an eternal perfection that's kick butt awesome, that if it was fully downloaded here into the 3D arena, it would blow it up. Our light is that great. It's the light of God. It's the one light that we all partake of. Sometimes I see it as if all of cosmos, everything that is everywhere, all the universes, dimensions, densities, all of it, is one great big magnificent faceted gem, and it's faceted all around as a sphere, and it's got infinite facets. Each and every facet is an element of being, is a person, is a blade of grass, is a tree, is a soul, is a castle, is a whatever. Whatever is has its own facet on the gem. The light of God is what shines out within the center of this gem. It's radiant. There's something that the light is so bright it goes beyond a sun, and yet it doesn't generate heat. It's a divine light that doesn't blind you to look at either. It might make everything kind of pale into the light and not be able to really see anything, but it doesn't hurt to look at. This light shines through and is the reality of the gem and of each facet. And this is a really kind of a funky thing because you got to make a shift and a twist here. We got to pretzel the mind. Come on, that's fun, right? So, in one way, each facet is a perspective for the light within to look out through. It's an angle of vision. And so it's a perspective. And so source light manifests through that and as that. In another way, it's a perspective on the cosmos, on the creation, on itself, in other words. So in another way, you're the looker, you're the observer, and you can stand outside of this sphere, because remember, this is the cosmos, this is all of creation, but that's not all that is. It might be God's pastime, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's not all that is. God didn't create God. God has an atmosphere that he, she, it exists in. There's the void. There's more. There's more than all the gods and goddesses and all the rest of it. And so we can also stand outside of the sphere and we can look in on God. Through each facet, we'll have a different perspective on the divinity that's manifest there. Looking out, looking in, at the same time as being the facet. Now, you're not just one facet on the gem. You've got many lifetimes going, right? So, the oversoul or the being, the higher self that you are, if that one was to light up all the facets that are you in this or that manifestation, now that would be interesting to look at, wouldn't it be? See, you know, this one 3D manifestation we've got going here, oh my God, it's your left pinky toe. Okay? We've got lots more of us going on. Now, this gem is not only multifaceted, it's multidimensional. And so it's way more than playing 3D chess. You know, there's just so many, it's all angles of perception, different ways to view things. None of them are right or wrong. They're just different. Do you see? What's right and wrong would be to go with the flow of your heart and where it guides, or to go against it. But we're all of that. I mean, overall, we're the whole thing. We stand in the middle. We have our identity there. And so we can perceive from multi dimensions. And at the same time, my friends, we are not limited. We've been programmed to be, we've been trained to be, but we're casting off all those shackles now. All the chains that bind us are in our beliefs. And as we pick and choose, you know, your heart will tell you. You'll be reading a book or watching a video or listening to someone, and something will click. A new angle of perception, a new way to look at something, and it will feel right to you. And like maybe just this whole thing with simultaneous time, you can learn this through physics, quantum physics. The observation problem. There are all kinds of things that are a real new tweak on what is reality. And we get to play with this. This is our game. This is our dance. And we're expanding out into the fullness of who and what we can be. And we don't know what the limits are. I would say there aren't any. Now, that's my opinion, obviously. I'm not claiming to be self-realized and to be knowing this and preaching from something like that. Not at all. None of us are any better than any of the rest of us, just like none of the perception angles are right and other ones wrong. There are some that would clash. There are some that don't fit well together. It's like this thing, have you seen it, where there's an aquarium, and let's say it's a 10-gallon aquarium, and it's got one of those big fish in it that's kind of flat like a disc, up and down like an angelfish, only a big, pretty, colorful one. And there are two cameras, and you're not viewing the aquarium, you're viewing what the cameras show. One is on the side angle where the fish is facing the camera. So he's facing the end of the aquarium, and there's that angle, there's that fish. And then there's another one that's from the side, and so you get to see the whole big, beautiful body of the fish, and it looks like two different creatures for sure. It's just that as you watch these two cameras as the fish is moving, you begin to see these are two separate fish maybe, but they sure seem synchronized in their movement. And you can have all kinds of theories about that until you wake up and realize it's all in the angle of your viewing. We're all really viewing the same thing. We're all shining with the same light. We're waking up to that now. And it's blowing our minds. Isn't that fun? Pretzeling the mind. Oh my God, that's one of my favorite pastimes. And my mind is actually very cooperative with it these days. It's content to play with the mind puzzles, like these eyes through which I hoped to see God are the eyes through which God sees me. There's a pretzel. And the mind doesn't mind pondering it. And maybe it doesn't know there's no solution that it can come to, or maybe it does. I don't know. But you just get real peaceful inside over this stuff. In some ways, all the fight goes out of you. Like I was saying in the last video, let's stop fighting life. If it is, it is. Maybe we don't want it to be and all the rest of it, but we got to chuck that stuff because that's just fighting reality. And until we quit it, until we can learn to be still with it, we don't get to take the next step. We all know people who got stuck somewhere along their path, and they went to the grave without ever having made much progress beyond a certain point. Well, God's not going to come in and interfere with us. You know, this is a free will ride we're on, and we get to make choices. And waking up is not easy. You get beaten and battered and bruised, and you got to look at stuff that you don't want to look at, and you got to recognize it and accept it and all that. And you got to get around the feelings and stuff that it brings up in you. And then we've got all that programming in there, you know, and that fights us every step of the way and yada, yada, yada. So waking up isn't a cakewalk or a picnic. I mean, in some ways it is. Okay, I meant to do this thing about mind. Am I going to do that? Yeah, I am. Okay, so we have a Today journal that just came through. Plus, we have this one from 12/8 about casting off limitation and transcending mind. Let's see where it goes. You know me, I write it, I forget it as soon as it comes through. Okay, what will I find by looking within this day, this hour, this moment? What is here? The answer comes. What is not? Okay. When will our senses be opened to perceive it then? Silence. Such a question deserves silence for an answer. It points within, back into the emptiness. It is so strange how both emptiness and the all, capital A, can be found there inside. To the mind, it doesn't make sense, but oh, that's one thing I'm right glad for, that I no longer trust mind's thoughts. That alone, all by itself, has brought such peace into the life. To be able to view thoughts, not constrained in any way to believe them, oh, this is freedom. Now, there may be greater and lesser freedoms, I don't know, but I honor this one that ever comes in my now. I watched a video the other day that showed how science is finally onto the fact, has discovered that thoughts are not contained nor stored somehow in the brain, as we used to believe. Brain surgeons probed this or that spot in the brain, seeking to discover what sort of thoughts or ideas it contained. It looks like those days are on the way out. Well, good riddance. Instead, what the show presented is the view that the brain acts like an antenna, picking up thoughts from out there. How interesting. I sense that this understanding is a good bit closer to actual fact. The brain is not a repository, never was. That was just us thinking we knew something, then doing the research to confirm or deny. Yes, when we think we know, that contorts the results of our work. It always does. Thus the virtue in being empty. In this way, we approach the closest to real truth. Also, in the emptiness, we find the fullness of the all contained. It's a mystery. I have no problem, no issue with mystery. I don't think they all need to get solved. There is joy in just pondering them. It is only the mind at work if you feel you need to solve every riddle. Some are just for fun. That's what I suspect. The fun of the Godhead in pretzeling our brains. Now the pretzel is in a good shape. A little in, a little out, a little up, a little down, and all around, yet in one harmonious whole. Let the brain trace those directions the riddle sends it in, while you, the spirit, take another walk entirely, while having some peace brought about by the preoccupied mind. Yep. Now, of course, those still identified with mind are naturally drawn off into the corner with it as it works through the conundrum, the riddle. Like a child in detention or in a corner wearing the dunce cap, some bright spirits still think themselves bound. It is not so, but how to tell those spirits who still think themselves captives to thought? Oh well. Let us never pity our fellow creatures. All are the divine plan, playing at being whatever they think themselves to be. All are quite capable of calling a halt and coming to center, going home, capital H, home in consciousness. Well, we all never left home. That's what we're finding out. It was all just a seeming. Oh, after the story, we were being told, and we fell into belief, into believing it, and we fell into identity, into identifying with this or that part in the play. What fun it shall be, and is, to discover that we are the one who plays literally all of the parts. But oh, how strange, too. No wonder we chose to do this waking up thing slowly at first. We are merciful to the level of belief we fell into. Time is the expression of mercy, whatever else it may also be. Now, are you one who assumes automatically the best of all situations? Or are you more dour? Look within. What is your nature? Now, step back from that nature a bit to realize it isn't yours. That's just a part you play, just a mask you wear. Can you get enough distance to see this? Maybe at least to begin to see it? Center in the here now for this. The now here also contains the nowhere. They're spelled just the same, but for a space in the middle. Or is it the nowhere that contains the now here? Does it matter? Who cares? I'll step out a second to say, a lot of this, what is your nature? Are you Tao or are you not? Um, a lot of this might actually be the body, the genetics, the ancestry, because that's the whole ancestral line. When you're in that body, you're in the whole line all at once. And so, best not to identify with it too much. It's fine to be there. We chose this. This is exactly what meets our needs. But that doesn't mean we have to let it limit us. Okay, truly, if it matters to you, then what or who within you is caring about that? Be on the lookout. Most of the time, I found it will be mind. Once you spot that, you can safely let mind go after its target while you go elsewhere. And that is fun, to go wandering elsewhere than mind. It might not be ultimate freedom, but oh, it feels nice to be free. I'm sure we'll link up at some point and be more whole, but meanwhile, this is fun. Do you recognize the guru within? Have you tapped into that fragrance or frequency of divinity there yet? The inner teacher? If not, are you at least open to this possibility? Or do you let your beliefs beat you back down into believing you're just human? What kind of internal voices do you let push you around? Or do you? Well, we all do this in one way or another, and there's no shame in it. We even have others playing parts in the overall play that we can blame if that's what we choose to do. And there's lots of programming going on, pushing us in that kind of direction. And we can be angry about that if that's what we choose. We can keep playing the victim role forever if that's our choice. I know I did that for a number of decades without even knowing it consciously. I didn't have a clue. That's how we were tricked, by seeing the barriers in the levels of mind, of our own mind. How bizarre that we hide things from ourselves, no less. Well, we had to do that on certain levels just to be able to make up this play called 3D life. As the one in full conscious awareness of that, we couldn't not know anything. There could not only be no secrets, but no one to communicate with. Only oneness, whole and complete. So, in setting this game up, as we did, there just had to be a certain amount of forgetting. We knew and accepted that. It will be interesting to trace it back when full or fuller awareness returns, where we went wrong, so to speak, where we allowed excessive forgetting into the drama. For all those who are angry, whether at some Draco or reptilian race, the Zetas, the Greys, the Illuminatis, the bad guys, you name it, well, let's take another angle on that. If you rise above the play or go deep enough within, back to center, and look at the same thing, the perspective will be quite different. If you're open to it, you may be shocked to discover that that bad guy is also you, just wearing a different mask. And further, all the yous that are in the various parts of the play have agreed that this is what would happen, just the way that it did. Now, I realize that's expecting a lot of me or of you to be able to touch down that deeply within. nor to rise up that high above to be able to see the pattern that way. I assure you, this view is possible, that it exists, and it can be experienced. If it's not part of your now, then just make room for the possibility. That's enough. It will become real for you at just the right time. Everything is already perfect. Now there's some rebellion popping up. Did you feel it? Was it in you? Now remember, just because you feel something doesn't necessarily mean the reaction is yours. Be on the alert for the fact that the brain antenna picks up waves from everywhere. Not all thoughts that float through your head or your awareness are generated by you. Now, for some, I've gone too far with that one. Too many big and strange concepts to take in at once, and that's okay. Just let go if you can. Realize that it's not you that's overwhelmed there. That's just the mind. You, the being, are quite fine with all of this. Feel that. It's actually stuff that you know already deep within. Just because you can't yet consciously access it doesn't mean it's not there. When the mind feels it's had too much, there's no need to identify with how it is feeling. Well, have mercy, have compassion for it, sure. Do consider stepping back a bit too. That might be the ideal time to recognize an identity that goes beyond mind. You, we, are so very much more than just this. You are actually infinite. Yeah, you. No kidding. Everyone is. That's what takes the ego out of it eventually. That realization that all that you are, so am I, so is he, so is she, so are we all. And no, it doesn't make mind sense. It doesn't have to. It transcends mind. That's what's got mind in a bind there. This transcendence it perceives. Mind wants to go along, but it can't. Now, I don't like the word can't, but I love truth better. And I recognize in this new perspective a greater power than in the old one. As long as I limit my identity to that of the mind, then I take on mind's limitations. We've been doing that for such a long time. We're all experts at this, being the mind or thinking we are that. It's a bit like the snake eating its own tail, huh? We're consuming ourselves this way, and unnecessarily. Our angels and spirit guides, our ancient star families, have been watching all this time. We weren't aware of them, but I guess we weren't ready to be, or we would have been, huh? And then, too, there were always some among us who retained the old awareness, the knowledge that we are never alone. We can look to the indigenous tribes for this. They kept the true flame burning for us, for when we'd be ready to come back together with them. The indigenous ones kept company with Mother Nature all of this time. At various times, they did try to warn us about the things we were doing to each other and to the earth. But the rest didn't listen too well. They were trapped too much within mind, within prejudice. Mind is always busy with its own internal concerns. Have you noticed that? It is seldom plugged into what's real sufficiently to hear such warnings. It brushes them off, thinking so much of itself and its abilities to know what is what. Well, thank God we've survived all of that so far. And thanks, Source, too, that the wise ones among the indigenous peoples are speaking up everywhere, all around the world, from Tibet to the Dogon to everywhere. They are finally breaking the long silence. We all benefit. Let us all show deep respect for these voices as they are heard. Let us do them the honor of centering deep within to listen to their sacred words. This is our higher self speaking to us through these ones. I've gone on YouTube and there are some videos, as a for instance, where a Dogon priest is speaking, giving a lecture, and the comments are so rude and inconsiderate. A lot of them. There's just no honor and respect there. There's no realization that what you're looking at is a wisdom so ancient that, of course, it doesn't go side by side with what you know. And the mind is so quick to be judgmental. Okay, we need not necessarily be there in body to listen, to hear what they say. Did you know that? It is passing now into the ether, into that oneness we all share. Remember, before and after we take on bodies, we are energy. We are consciousness. We are one. There is not a solitary atom in all of creation. All are entangled, as the physicists term it. It just means they're linked up. They are one. It's the same with what the crystal skulls bring to the table, so to speak. These somehow contain more of the wisdom of the ages. They are ancient computers which contain a magnitude of knowledge and understanding the mind, as we know it now, is not capable of encompassing. It goes beyond, as do our abilities. And I'll step out just a moment here and say the mind I'm talking about here that's limited is the 3D mind. There is transcendent mind. It's just not the 3D version. Okay, we are much more than mind realizes or even can realize. Make room for the mystery there in your world. Don't think everything must be solved, must have an answer. That's the prattling of mind. Learn to recognize it at work so that you can just turn away if you choose to. Let us no longer choose to be limited to the abilities of any one mind, or even the collective one. We go beyond. Until we can make room for that in the inn of being, we will live within limits of our own making. So let us no longer use the excuse of not knowing anything. That is not so. On some level, at some depth of being, we truly know everything. Akasha exists in the one, and we are that. And the reality is that whatever we need to know in any moment, we know. It will come and present itself to us as needed. Life works that way. Are you open to see it? Or are there beliefs in the way? And of course, one of the ways it will come is in what you're spurred to do and look up and see and so on. So it's not like you're just going to sit there and say Om and it's going to appear before you. I don't mean to imply that, although that happens sometimes too. Okay, we have used the excuse of the subconscious and unconscious minds to pretend we don't know. Well, we rightfully do know, yet because it is somehow cordoned off from our conscious awareness, we use that as our excuse. Our excuse to say, I don't know. So let each one become aware in the saying of this familiar phrase, I don't know, which I use quite a lot, that on some level, we really do know. Now, they're both true. We know and we don't know. And in your higher self, you've got no problem with that. It's only 3D where there's the duality that seems to clash. Just because we don't have immediate conscious access to something doesn't mean it's not there in our knowing on some level. The conscious mind takes the merest small slice of what is perceived into its awareness. The huge bulk of what we know we're not conscious of. Well, so what? Does that mean we don't know it? No, it doesn't. It just means we don't have ready or immediate access to it, maybe. Perhaps we could have that access if we didn't hold such beliefs and say such things unthinkingly as, I don't know. Ugh, I say that so much. I can tell you, I'll be watching and observing my frequent use of that, one of my favorite phrases. I don't know. It will be fun to see what pops into awareness as I watch. On the one side of the coin, we have the true and actual emptiness that is contacted within. And that is not a mind thing, however, far from it. That is the heart of the now here, or of heart. Thus, there is a depth of difference in the meaning that can be behind these three words. I don't know. Let us sense into what they mean, both when we speak them and when someone else does. Let's appreciate the vastness of the canyon of difference that the same words can carry or convey. What they say is one thing. What we hear is another. Those two aren't necessarily the same. What is said, what is heard. How often we are not heard. We all have this in our experience. To say one thing and to have those around us hear another, a thing that hasn't been said, hasn't been meant. And while we know that getting it across to them has been a losing proposition, well, silence is often better than that. It doesn't matter anyway. We radiate our meaning. It goes out as magnetic waves from the heart. It is picked up on some level by all who receive. There is some comfort in knowing that, at least subconsciously, people do get our meaning. While it may be beyond their current capacity to understand, beyond their mind's current ability, still, they get it somehow. It will be there for them when they are ready to tap into it. The seed is planted. The harvest will come. For so long, we have been choosing our limitations, without consciously knowing it, of course. Now the time has come to choose to cast them off. No more limitations. No, not one. We will cease believing we are these limited beings called human walking around. We will see through the fallacy of this way of thinking, of identifying with our parts in the great play. Our time has come, my friends, and we are ready. Have no fear or doubt. The time of living in that awful energy of fear and doubt is finally past. We now have it in our repertoire of experiences, so let's move on. Let's be alert to removing all belief in limitation of any kind. We are not limited. We are divine. And let us wake up to that. Thank you.